Warrior has been quite a journey, as we all know. Right now, it is probably the worst class, but I think I've put something together that I'm very proud of. Right now, the biggest totem build is Shockwave Totems, which is kind of the basic totem. I tried basically every ancestral totem, and I've settled on Sunder. I do like it more than Shockwave. However, I will talk about some other alternatives. In general, Titan is a very tight package that you can use on whatever totem you want, and I will go into that in detail in this video. Timestamps, as always, are up there or in the chapters. Put me on ×2 if you need to. Read the macro guide if you prefer written content. Before we get into the guide, though, a quick word from today's sponsor, Boot.dev. Boot.dev is a learning platform that teaches you backend development from start to finish in the Python and Go programming languages. This is achieved by letting you, well, actually write code instead of just tackling theoreticals. To gamify and make the process more fun so you never get bored, you can earn achievements, XP, complete quests, and even compete on a global leaderboard. Programmers have amazing earning potential, with the median salary in the US being $100,000 in 2023. Learning to code is not a get-rich-quick scheme though, since it takes time to learn the basics. This is where Boot.dev supports you with an active Discord community and an AI-powered bear wizard that walks you through the issue while it tries to deepen your understanding of the material. Go to Boot.dev and use my code Palsteron to get 25% off your entire first year if you choose the annual plan. With that being said, let's get back to the build guide. Now, let's get into it. Everything you need to know about totems. Totems are not minions, which is already indicated by where they are in the passive tree, but just so you know, nothing related to percentage minion damage or percent minion attack speed will work. Same with supports. You can't socket them in, and they also don't have a minion tag. They are, however, an extension of you. This is a little bit more complicated, but what it means is it inherits all your increased damage bonuses from the tree. So for example, you wouldn't just have to scale totem damage. You could also scale damage with maces and everything related to maces. You could also scale increased attack damage, increased area damage, increased AoE works on them, all of these, also attack speed. However, it gets a little bit more confusing because it doesn't actually use your weapon. It says that on the gem itself, right? It uses its own weapon and it deals so and so much damage. You can see I'm level 40 right now. I'm dealing 1,400 to 2,100 base physical damage, and that is per totem. And it completely ignores all the physical fire cold damage here. All you're really looking for is +7, but more on that later. So another fact is the totem placement speed is incredible. If you see me right here, I'm going to place down the totem and it's going to travel quite fast. And I want you to look at my animation time. It is like almost instant. I'm not even like, I can walk, place. It is incredibly, it's like a luxurious stat. It's like, it makes your build feel infinitely better. So whenever you can pick it up, next level, for example, I would be picking up this node right here as well. Whenever you can pick it up, do so. Now, totems do scale with +2 levels, which we have our own section on how you can get to level 40, just so you kind of understand the difference between a level 20 and a level 40 totem. It is basically dealing like 40 times or more damage. So it is very hard to imagine. What I tell people always, if they ask me, is a +6 fine? The answer is, would you like to start removing support gems for free? That is kind of the comparison I would give. The answer is always and always no. Is +1 on my gloves fine? No. Is +2 on my amulet fine? No. And so on. Another thing I sometimes see people do is they actually scale their totems defensively, which is something you have to do in PoE 1. In PoE 2 though, they don't really die. So that's also why I don't take any of these nodes, just so you are aware. Now, why are levels so important? So if you look at the level 20 weapon that a totem has, because it uses its own weapon, 141 to 212, that is absolutely miserable compared to what you could get on a Great Hammer. You can get like, I don't know, 500 to like 900 damage even in endgame if you had a lot of money. But it does scale with levels, and this 141 to 212 gets almost or basically times 10 if you get to level 40, so you do 10 times more damage. But it's not just that. At the same time, melee skill levels also scale your Sunder, which is supported with Ancestral Warrior Totem. Both scale with those levels, and Sunder goes from level 20, 531, 265 to 2,353. So if you think about that, 1 times 10 is your damage, 1 more than times 4 is your damage, you're gonna do like 40 or more times the damage. So yes, the scaling is outrageous, but how do we get there? Let's say we start at level 20, which you can get from an uncut gem at level 90. So from there, we get +14 to melee skill levels, from 2 of these weapons. You can see right here, +7 of all melee skills. Before you get this, nothing on your weapon matters. Absolutely nothing. You have to be careful. That's going to be its own section about attribute requirements. So I'm going to help you a little bit with finding a weapon. But other than that, +7 is necessary. No +6, no +5, +7. After that, +3 to melee skills from an amulet, just like here. You get +2 from gloves, just like here. +2 to level of all melee skills. And then you're going to be at level 39 already. One thing that will happen also is your mana cost is going to go up. We're also going to talk about that in its own section. Now, the last level from 39 to 40 is the hardest one. There are 3 things that you can do. First up, you can corrupt all your skills to level 21, which is quite hard to do. So if you look right here, you can corrupt Ancestral Warrior Totem to 21, this one, and both Sunders, because we have 2 setups. That is pretty damn expensive, and I personally haven't gotten a single 21 actually, so I just kind of gave up, and it is, yeah. If you have all of those at 21, then that is by far the most efficient way. The second most efficient way is to get a +1 level from Prism of Belief. Now, these here can get quite expensive, but you only need a +1. These go up to +3. Just so you know though, +3 doesn't give you anything because the level cap is 40. Now, how do you get these? Now, you have to find this search right here, to level of all specific skills. And there is a spreadsheet with this. I'm not going to explain why, but you have to type in here 11, 11. And there's 3 different types of Prism of Beliefs that are going to pop up. If you search by money, you will see that +1 level of warrior totems are right here. Now, they can start at like very cheap. They can get quite expensive. It always depends on the meta. These can go up to 10 or higher divines, but they are very strong. Let's just say very, very strong. If you cannot obtain them, it's totally fine. This is just the last level from 39 to 40. It's obviously a big deal, but I was on 39 basically forever farming Trial Master. Now, if you want a +2, which you usually don't, but just so you know, you have to type in 11.5, and then you're going to see +2s. I know this is completely scuffed, obviously, this way of searching. And then if you type in 12, you would see +3s, which are ridiculously expensive. I'm talking absolutely crazy levels, right? But yeah, just so you know. And if you get ultra lucky for some reason, you can also get +1 melee skills from gloves. This is a corruption. So you would have to get a +2 on your normal gloves. And then you would also have to corrupt it into +1, which is like the odds for that are outrageous. Like I'm talking over 1 in 100, right? Like you're not going to get it. If you get a steal from the trade side, then sure. But I just wanted to put this here for completionist sake. Now, then let's talk about weapon swapping. You will notice here that I have 2 two-handers in my main hand, which I achieve by using the Giant's Blood Keystone. And then I also have an offhand with a fast hitting one-hander and a shield. The shield is kind of up to you. I'm using CDR, so I can faster shield charge around, but you can also put a more defensive shield, more on that itemization-wise later. But yeah, I have certain skills assigned to those, and I have certain passive skills assigned. As you can see, I'm actually using all my weapon set passives, and that is for a reason. Totems are completely insane with weapon swap points. It's like getting free points. And the reason is that your totem nodes get snapshotted on the weapon that you place them with. So for example, I have both my totem setups only on weapon set 1, which means that if I place them down and then I swap, I will get all the damage bonuses from both my two-handers while also enjoying the defensive bonuses from being a shield-based build. Which is why moving forward in this video, you will see me have these block nodes on my weapon swap while also having all my offensive nodes. So you will see I have way more points than I should have because of this fact. If you do not know how weapon swap points or how you use them, I will link a convenient video down below in the description that will explain it to you. But I'll go over it both in the passive tree section and also in the skill section for what exactly you have to bind where. I know some of you guys are going to be like, I don't want to do this, but trust me, in this build, it is not optional. And once you learn it, you're like, I can't believe I haven't done this before. This is ridiculous. Now, one thing you probably have noticed is how goddamn expensive these totems get once you get to level 40. And while I know a lot of you guys are going to say, oh, pal, I'm just going to go to level 34 so it's comfy and I'm only going to lose half the damage. remember, you're losing way more than half the damage because your Sunder is also going to go down. So in reality, you're going to have like a fourth or at most a third of your damage. So I'll show you how you can tackle this right here. I would personally not recommend at any point to skip out on levels for any reason whatsoever. The first part is converting a part of your mana cost into life. If I put down my totems, you will see my life go down and my mana go down. Now I feel like, oh, that might get scary or something. Not really, because we have 5,000 ES, which we're also going to talk about. So you can see your life in a sense as a second mana bar. We achieve this because of, first up, Hulking Form, Titan, which increases small effect of passive skills. So these go from 6 to 9%. So we can basically, with Price of Freedom and then also Blood Rush, get a total of 51% conversion, basically almost perfectly halving the cost and being able to use both mana regen and life regen to recover it. We then use some reduced cost. The first one is from Price of Freedom, and the second one is from our Anoint, which is going to be Deep Trance up on our Amulet. As well as that, we have Inspiration on our mapping setup or clear setup from the Ancestral Warrior Totem. The reason is, while you're moving around in a map, you're going to place way more totems than at the boss. And my boss totems are quite more expensive. You can see 370, 380, and then my boss totems cost over 500. So you see this right here. So you will have, against the boss, you will have to kind of flask up. But the totems don't really die all that much. Very rarely. You might have to replace them or stuff like that, but that's about it. So I haven't really ever found it to be a problem. Now, how do we recover the life though? Well, on the passive tree, you can get a bit of regen. So first up, we're using Ancestral Mending, 1% of life while you have a totem. And then, well, the totems also get regen, but it doesn't really matter. You get 0.5% from Relentless. And then you also can get 1.65 from Azira's Disdain from a Corruption. This one is very strong. Even if you can just snag like 1%, this makes a huge difference. As well as that, you can get flat regen on, for example, your body armor, boots, gloves. I don't have it everywhere, but it is quite potent. On top of that, we are using percentage life regeneration rate. So all the percentage regen, this multiplies it. You can also get a little bit more percentage of life per second here if you want to take these 2 points as well. But that should personally not be necessary because you should also have your flask upgraded and you should have a good flask in general. If you put down totems, you will immediately flask up. However, one thing I will say, do not just rely on your life flask because it is quite uncomfortable and it's a lot of button presses. I would still recommend getting at least a little bit. As well as that, you can also get life regen rate from jewels right here. How about mana though? Well, the first thing you can do if you have a ton of divines is by melting Maelstrom. This flask is completely ridiculous. Let me just get to a well real quickly. What it basically does is it constantly gives you mana, so it does not stop whenever you go full, but it also just recovers your mana back to full whenever you press it. It has a small downside of taking a little bit of damage. You guys can see it doesn't matter. So for example, let's say I put down my totems, I go to 0, I literally click it and I go to full. This flask is currently like 20 divines, so I mean, if you have the money, it's ridiculous. But for everything that I'm gonna talk about in this video, we'll just have a normal one. That being said, a mana flask like this goes a long way, and you should always upgrade it. Also use Glass Blower's Bubbles to get the extra quality. On top of that, we are an energy shield setup, so that means that we're gonna path up here and we're gonna need intelligence in order to wear stuff like, for example, this Hexer's robe right here, which means that we already get quite a bit of extra mana just from that fact alone. However, that's not really enough because we also need mana from gear. Now, these boots are pretty shitty, but I have pretty good mana on belt. On gloves, I have a little bit, and then on my jewelry, as you can see right here. Fact of the matter is, most prefixes, there's not that much other than maybe a rarity that you would need. So you have a pretty easy time just getting life and mana. You also get mana with levels, so don't be concerned if you're like level 70 or something. It's totally normal to be at like 1,000 mana and just ramp up over time. But the second part is you also need mana regen percentage, which you also get from jewelry. You can get it from rings or from amulet. I don't have perfect rolls, but it does what it's supposed to. As well as that, use catalysts to give them 20% quality and increase all your mana modifiers. Now, if you're still having crazy troubles, especially early, you can use something like a Hrimnor's, which is decent. It will basically lose you 7 levels, which it does give you Aftershock, which actually does work, and it's nice and all. But just so you know, it will literally half your damage if you go for this just over a +7. Just pointing it out there. But if you need it while leveling, because you're going to have a ton of damage while leveling anyways, that is totally fine. With leveling, I don't mean from 1 to 60. I would not recommend leveling from 1 to 60, but afterwards, kind of like to get your levels up, get your life up, get your mana up. The more life and mana you have, the more sustainable these costs will also get percentage-wise. But this should by no means be your end game setup. You should tackle the cost issue, not use crappy items. Now, in terms of what weapons do you want and how can you find them? You type in 200 mace plus level to all skills 7. And now you might be, okay, I'm just gonna search. First up, always remember you can go down to Exalts right here, and there could be options. So you can see they start at 15 Exalteds or something, and people are telling you, wow, these weapons are so expensive. Why is that? Well, this is not the whole story. What you have to understand is this weapon, for example, for 15 Exalts has 212 strength requirement. Now, if you look at what this keystone does right here, Giant's Blood, is it triples your attribute requirement. So you would need over 600 strength, which on a strength stacker, Gemling Legionnaire would be fine, but we also have int to use, and we're not strength stacker, right? So that is a crazy ask. As you can see, for example, my weapons right here have 104 strength and then 104 strength here again. And that is because I'm using advanced weapons, which are usually the bad ones that you don't pick up, right? But the point of the matter is the base damage on these weapons actually don't matter. So always pick up even the shittiest two-handers. In fact, maybe prefer the shitty ones. But most people will never get there because it's just very random, right? But in case you get one, just so you know, those are money. Now you can put requirements in here. So let's say 126, and let's go back to divines, because I'm pretty sure these will not be in the exalted range. So if you go to divines, they start at round about 1 divine. Actually, you can get them, maybe even for exalted orbs. Well, this completely depends on the meta. Yeah, no, they start at round about 1 divine. Don't take these prices for anything, but I will kind of explain what matters on these weapons. So all of this is garbage. Even the accuracy does not work on your totems. None of this works. Your totems don't give you anything on kill. There's only a few stats that you're looking for. And those are, for example, +2 strength, stun duration, and stun buildup. So if you, for example, look at my weapon right here, I've stun buildup in my implicit. I also have it on runes from the stone rune. Plus I have strength on the bottom. Unfortunately, don't have stun duration. But all these stats do work, and they do give you an easier stun, which is very strong on Titan. If you look at this weapon has stun buildup on the bottom. On the top, it doesn't have stun duration or strength though. Now, there is a big cheat though that you can use to make your strength requirements lower and save a lot of money on the trade website, because there are soul cores that convert, I should say, the requirement from strength to a certain attribute, right? So either int or dex. Dex you're not going to have a lot of, but int you're going to have quite a bit. So for example, don't use this mace. I just put it out of my stash to show you. It says 174 strength here. 20% of that is going to get converted. So now I can see 139 and 34 int. And I can do that again. And now you can see 104 strength and 69 int. Absolutely glorious. However, you will notice that I actually cannot equip this because 69 int times 3 is still not possible. So usually you can only use one of these soul cores, so be careful with that. Don't forget that this int also gets tripled from Giant's Blood, not just the strength requirement. Now, you will have noticed the energy shield on top of my life. And I know that most totem builds right now and most builds in this area are going for full life stacking and maybe armor. But I have bad news for you. Armor is kind of dog shit right now. So I don't like dog shit builds. So we're just not going to use it whatsoever. And we're just going to use what GG gave us. And we're going to path up here to Reinforced Barrier and Ancient Aegis Adamant Recovery to get a lot of percentage energy shield. We're going to pair this with Edziri's Disdain, which gives you life as extra energy shield. Not conversion. You still keep the life to spend on your skills. But you just get extra energy shield. And it is completely bonkers. This helmet alone, if you look at this, 5176, like it's like half of my energy shield. Crazy. And then you want a body armor for it. And you have to be careful because if it has too much int requirement and you don't have that int, that's going to be an issue. So that can go up to like 200. And as you can see, I could not even use one of those bases. So try to get something that has good energy shield, but also a life roll is still quite valuable because it will make it a lot easier for you to sustain the cost of your skills. It will scale your regen and whatnot. Also, if you can snag a percentage maximum energy shield roll on your Ami that's very strong. And if for example, I had one more level, I would also put another point into Armored Energy Shield right here. Don't forget that all the small nodes here do get buffed by the hulking form, making Energy Shield even better. As well as that, we're of course using Grim Feast because it recovers a lot of Energy Shield. Level this as high as you can, as high as your int lets you. Get quality on it, which is also going to give you extra recovery. Yeah, Grim Feast is OP. Use it until it gets nerfed. We should talk about that at the end of the video, though. I have a plan B for if Energy Shield gets nerfed, and there's also most likely armor buffs on the horizon. But before that, we go through this whole setup. All right, I'll quickly show you guys how this build plays with a tier 15 map, +1 irradiated on a C page with a boss, so we can also show that off. So once again, I have a single target setup and a clear setup, and I can just swap between it. You can also put it on different keybinds if you really want to, but you don't really need the one while you need the other. You're basically just placing totems, moving around, and you are going to sometimes, really just sometimes, going to press your flasks. Now, in general, you can see I don't really have any natural energy shield sustain whenever you get into the map. It would be nice to kind of pick up some stuff with Grim Feast. We have a poison map, which is a little bit annoying for us, but you can see everything's kind of just dying. And one important thing to note about this is your ranged build. You can literally place these totems on the edge of the screen. So very often, once you get there, stuff is already getting hit. So you can see our mana going down. That's because I'm not using Maelstrom. So you have to sometimes press your mana flask. If you have Maelstrom, obviously, that will go away quite severely. You can kind of see my playstyle. I'm kind of just like clicking, moving, clicking, moving. Now, one important thing is that if you get into a rough situation, let's for example say like a breach and everything's coming from all sides. Let's say the breach has, like the map mod is increased attack speed, movement speed. You can place down your totem, stand in the middle, and then use any of your offhand skills, and it will automatically swap you into offhand, and then you have all your block available. If you're just placing totems and moving, that is not up, right? Like your shield is not going to be up. You can see our Grim Feast is keeping us pretty up pretty hard. In general, obviously, outside maps are way more impressive than this. I didn't choose the right one for a YouTube highlight, but it doesn't really matter. I'm just going to show you the boss mostly. You already saw some of the clear in the intro. This build is also incredibly, you kind of saw it here, just how far the upheavals go. This build is incredibly cozy for stuff like Ultimatum, for example. But yeah, one important thing, I already pointed this out, but you can shield charge and then blink at the end to kind of stop its trajectory or its attack time. So you first shield charge and then you blink at the very end. This was actually bad timing, but outdoors is a lot easier. Boom. Okay, let's quickly kill this. It's dead. Okay, so shield charge and at the end blink. All right, so let's try it one more time. Shield charge, blink. There you go. If you get to do this, then your shield charge is super smooth. Before we go to the boss, one more thing I should note is Svalin is very, very strong. As low of minus block chance as you can. Very strong against breaches and rituals. So if you're having trouble there, definitely go for that. Now, on the boss, I will basically just place my totems and then armor break and Orb of Storms. You don't want to place your totems too early because they only have like 8 to 9 seconds, depending on how much skill effect duration you have of duration. So you don't want them to run out immediately. But yeah, you will see. So yeah, I swapped to my single target setup right here. You can have it on different keybinds if you want to. I'm just going to shield charge in. I'm going to place down the totems. Now, I should have put the Orb of Storms earlier, but this is just a small boss, so he basically gets absolutely annihilated. But if you see me, for example, do Arbiter, I'll just do this real quick. If you see me do Arbiter or a Breach boss, you place it down as early as you can, and while he's talking and whatnot, at the very end, you place down your totems, and then you just start whacking and stand there. Usually he gets stunned immediately from that first hit, so you can just go there and whack him again, and the totems are going to get hit once or twice again. And if you're, for example, facing Arbiter 4, there's a good chance you're not going to one-shot him, so then he's going to go into his next phase. Now, let's talk about Sunder Totems. Just so you understand, Titan does not mean you can't run any of these other totems that I'm going to talk about. Titan is a very good package for all of them, and they scale extremely similarly if you look at the tags. For example, Shockwave is almost one-to-one the same. The only thing that would change is you can't use these mace nodes, which is quite a big deal, but I can straight up tell you, you can play any of these totems if you wish to. Now, Sunder consumes armor break And if it does, you get a juicy crit, not just ×2 damage, but 100% increased damage bonus. So 3 times damage. It is ridiculously strong, and you can stand at the boss and basically just hammer away while your totems are consuming it, and the boss is kind of stunned, as you've seen in the intro and the gameplay stuff. But Shockwave is also something a lot of people love. So if you look at how Shockwave totems look, this is a Shockwave totem. Now, obviously, you can give it AoE, right, and everything, but Shockwaves are quite good. The best thing about them is that they just fire away even if there's no nearby enemies. So you can kind of pre-place them, they can already charge up, and when the enemy is near them, it's going to pop. One of the things I do not like about it is that you have to constantly replace it quite a bit, because if the enemy is not in the radius, then you kind of lost. You will also have to invest a lot more into AoE if you're playing this than Sunder, so you'll probably have to sacrifice another 6 to 7 points. However, where Shockwave Totem really shines is stuff like Breach or Ritual. So if that is all you do all day, there's a good chance that you straight up just want to play this build, but on a Shockwave version. And there are a ton of guides about that out there. I will link one down below in the description. But I personally prefer Sunder quite a bit. Now, there are 2 more options. The first one is a little bit disappointing because Molten Blast started out incredible. If you guys don't know what this skill is, basically you throw these projectiles and they kind of fragment out. So if you go scattershot on it, you can get quite a bit of projectiles, and you can also do some cheese with like frost walls and whatnot. The thing that doesn't really work with Molten Blast is a technicality. It's not a melee skill. So all the +2 levels do not work with it, right? And while your Sunder is going to be on level 39, your Shockwave Totem is going to be on 39 or maybe even 40, your Molten Blast, as you can see, doesn't get any additional. And even with that fact, Molten Blast is actually decent as a totem. I will not say it's unplayable. I will probably go Deadeye. I'm not 100% sure on this, but it is a projectile, so you can skill it in other ways. And the last one is Rolling Slam, which should, in theory, be more damage than Sunder, but apparently the aftershocks don't work or something. So you can put this on your single target. Rolling Slam is obviously complete garbage, or in my opinion anyways, if you cast it yourself, because you're kind of like stuck in this animation, but your totem doesn't care about it, and it deals a lot of damage between all of these slams, and it's about as fast as Sunder, but has a little bit more damage, especially because it gets more damage to heavy stunned enemies on its last hit. If you see right here, second slam, 50% more. So in theory, it's really good, but it's currently bugged with aftershocks. If that ever gets fixed, I will update the guide, and there's actually a good chance that I will replace my single target with Rolling Slam. Not 100% sure on this, because there is still a downside, which is it's quite tiny. So if the enemy is moving a bit, then we're going to miss out on a lot of damage. Then let's talk about Ascendancy. So Titan is far and away, in my opinion, the strongest Ascendancy for Sunder Totems. For Shockwave Totems, there are arguments to be made for stuff like Gembling Legionnaire. Warbringer is basically completely out of the question because it just has a lot of fluff. However, let's go into Titan. The first most important note on Titan is Hulking Form. 50% increased effect of small passive skills. And with your weapon swap and how much reach you have and how many points you get, you will realize just what a crazy amount of stuff this gives you. It really doesn't look that impressive. These are usually 16, now they're 24. But once you get to like level 80, level 90, and you start filling out your whole tree, you're like, what the hell? And you realize this is maybe the strongest Ascendancy point in the whole game. There is a caveat though, because it is a second point, and the first point is dog shit. It's carry a chest with 20 inventory slots, which is kind of nice. I'll grant him that, but it doesn't give you any character power, so I'm just going to ignore it. So it basically costs you 2 Ascendancy points, and it is still ridiculous. That's how strong this node is. It also makes it way easier to go into Energy Shield, because all of these go from 12 to 18. Like, the sum of all the points, it is ridiculous what it does. Also, these small nodes right here give 4% strength, which is huge. On top of that, we're going Crushing Impacts. This is kind of like Culling Strike, but for stuns. Prime for stun basically just means that enemies don't get stunned if their stun meter is 100% full, but depending on the rarity, 40% a normal, I think 60 rare or something, yeah, 80% for a unique. So it's TLDR, it's way easier to stun enemies. Now, on the last note here, this is quite interesting. Credit for this to Dreamcore, who pointed this out to me, that apparently this only works with Sunder, or I don't know if there's already new info out there, but chance for slam skills to cause aftershocks, it does work for totems. We already know this, right? It works on trim noise as well. But that alone would not want me to use it because I would rather use surprising strength, which is 40% more against heavy stun, which enemies are not always heavy stun, but overall, I think it's still quite a bit better than Earthbreaker. However, there seems to be an interaction right now, or a bug, we're not 100% sure, where whenever you aftershock with either split the earth or this small node, which also works, this will double aftershock. And we're not really sure why that is, or if it ever gets fixed, but just so you know, that's where Earthbreaker is here. If that ever changes, you will see my tree go to surprising strength. The pinned comment down below will also say that. But yeah, aftershocks are not just a lot of damage, they're also extremely cozy while clearing, because after it sunders again. So for example, if breach mobs are constantly jumping on you, it's just a pretty big deal. Next up, let's talk about my skill setups. I actually don't have them all filled. I didn't really know what to do here. If you have any idea, chunk it in here. However, I have 2 main skill setups, and that means you have to get 2 level 20s on Ancestral Warrior and 2 level 20s on Sunder, which is annoying, but in my opinion, it's worth the comfiness. If you're fine with, I don't know, swapping gems around all the time, all day, that is fine with me. You can put them in the Mace Strike and just put them down here whenever needed. Have 1 setup, totally fine with me. But what I do with 2 setups is whenever I'm mapping, I have this one right here, and then whenever I get to the boss, I do this. I don't even assign it to another keybind. This is completely up to you and only for comfiness. However, my clear setup, this is what I use for everything but big bosses. Sunder, Ancestral Warrior Totem, Magnified Effect for the AoE, Martial Tempo to make it more responsive, Upheaval to give the extra fissures, and then use Inspiration to reduce the mana cost so you can easier spam totems and reposition them. On my single target damage, once again, Ancestral Warrior with Sunder, Concentrated Effect, so less AoE, more damage this time. I have Brutality, just straight up more damage, no downside. Heavy Swing, more damage, less attack speed. Comes out to around about 20% more DPS overall. And then I also have Bloodlust, more fizz, melee damage to enemies, but only if they're bleeding. So the way I bleed is I have Lacerate right here on my Armor Breaker. As for Armor Breaker, this is quite important. Whenever an enemy has broken armor, Sunder will consume it and give you a guaranteed crit. So that means that it will get 100 critical damage bonus and the critical damage bonus already. So it will basically deal triple damage, which is why you saw me place my totems, wait until it procs, and then whack the enemy over and over. Just stand here and whack them. It's going to be stunned most of the time anyways, so you can do that. And then you have this ping pong of your totem's funder consumes the armor break, you reapply it, and so forth, so you get a ton of extra crits. Armor Breaker is ridiculous, right? So what do we have on here? Demolisher, just for the more armor break, which is probably also overkill, I'm gonna be honest. We have Break Posture for a little bit of extra days. We have the Lacerate to enable the Bloodlust right here. And we have Rage as a 5th link to also get some extra Rage. Now, we do have more Rage down below at the Orb of Storms. Actually, Orb of Storms, we basically just plop down whenever a boss is up, and we just stand in it while we wait for it to proc, and you can see I gain a little bit of Rage there. Orb of Storm is not that important, but I put Persistence on, and from it as well, I get Font of Rage, and I actually forgot to put a 6th link here. There would be the Mana Font as well for extra mana regen. Then we have Shield Charge, which there's no real reason to level it. I just throw it in there. It has a cooldown, and you use it with Unbreakable, Maim, and Stomping Ground. I'm not really sure. Maybe there's better supports. I'm not really all that familiar. We also have a Blink, which is only on my offhand, and I have Ingenuity for extra CDR and Arcane Tempo. Now, the way this works is you're going to be shield charging with Q, and then at the end, I actually should show that off first. At the end, shield charge has this weird animation where it slows you down. So a Q, at the end, you can see I'm kind of like stuck there for a second, right? That's the attack animation. But what you can do is you can skip out of that with Blink if you time it correctly, as you can see right here. And if you master that, you're going to be so fast. For auras, we have Grim Feast, which is where you should put on Vitality, Clarity, and Precision. There's a reason why I have it on Grim Feast and not the other way around, just so you know, in terms of weapon swap. And then I have Time of Need, which periodically recovers a lot of life and also removes curses and elemental ailments. It's just really nice to have in between whenever you go down low, especially for like whatever life costs you have. It's a really nice support. And I have Fast Forward here because it reduces the time intervals in which it heals you. Now, extremely important here, weapon swap for skills. You can click here and then you can assign it to either both weapon sets or one or the other. make sure that on your totems you have always attack without moving and put it to only weapon set 1. Same is true for your single target totem. Whatever totem setups you have, always set them to weapon set 1, which is where your two-handers should be. If you don't do this, your levels will go from 40 to around about 26, and you will deal probably 5% of your damage. You will notice very, very, very quickly. That is the first thing. Second thing, Armor Breaker is going to be, once again, always attack without moving, but put it only on weapon swap 2. Also important. Shield Charge, only put it on weapon swap 2, where your shield setup is. Blink, only put it on weapon swap 2. This basically means that whenever I weapon swap, you can see that my Grim Feast will go off, because against single target, it doesn't really do anything. I don't kill any enemies, and my Blink will go on. So I will right-click right now, and there it is, right? You will see that Blink is on, and then I go place a totem, and it's back to Grim Feast. So for that reason, Grim Feast only on weapon set 1. Time of Need, you have on both, because you always want to have that heal up. And then Orb of Storms doesn't really matter. Now, as for gearing, I already talked extensively about the weapon choice in the info section. But once again, two-handers with a +7 that you can wear, even though you have a triple attribute requirement from Giant's Blood. Budget option would be Hrimnor's Hymn, but it is considerably worse. It's like half damage to a +7. So it is at most a band-aid for you to get a +7 ASAP. It can help out a little bit with mana cost early on. If you're still using it at level 80, 85, there is a significant issue in your build and you have to reconsider. As for offhand, you want a very fast one-hander. So this one, for example, has 2 attacks per second. That is because the faster you whack with Armor Breaker, the faster you can move afterwards and the faster you can reapply Armor Break. Once again, Sunder consumes Armor Break to get a guaranteed crit. Other than that, +2 levels just means your Armor Breaker will break more armor, but it doesn't do anything for your totems because they are snapshotted to weapon set 1, so that doesn't matter at all. Strength can help quite a bit. Do note that if you, for example, have cap your strength with these two-handers, once you swap, the strength will go away. So if you don't match that on your one-hander, there might be some stuff missing or become unequipped. As for shield choice, my 2 favorites are for anything where you just want to be fast. Crest of Ardura for the increased cooldown recovery rate, makes you makes your shield charge and blink around way faster. And then if you have something hard to do, for example, Simulacrum, or you're farming breaches, you can also use Svalin, which has the minus block chance, but block chance is lucky. Together with all the block nodes from your offhand, this will be very potent in terms of defenses. As for your helmet, it has to be Edziri's Disdain with as much maximum life as extra ES as possible. You want as low damage taken bypass as possible so that your energy shield can actually protect your life whenever you get low from casting your skills. The regen implicit is ridiculously strong. It will give you like an extra 100 or so regen, or even more depending on how much multipliers you have. Ridiculous. After that, you want a body armor with as high energy shield as possible and as low int requirement as possible. Unless you do have a ton of int, then just go for whatever. A life roll would be very strong and also get your res or attributes. For gloves, you want +2 over everything, then attack speed, life, mana, whatever you can get. On boots, all that matters is 35% movement speed is a must-have, and then everything else. You're not like a ranger build that gets a ton of movement speed from the tree or anything like that. Your boots are really, really important. Your belt, once again, attributes, res, life, mana, armor doesn't really do anything. And then your jewelry. Here's where you're gonna fix your mana, basically. You want mana regen on as many of these as you possibly can. And you want max mana as well, so you can use the quality for all the mana modifiers, because if you have both mana mods on there, you are going to multiply both. Other than that, attributes, res, you definitely want 1 high accuracy roll on one of these, preferably both. I have a pretty shitty second ring, but as much accuracy as possible. Do not forget that we cannot use Resolute Technique because we actually want to crit, because Sunder has guaranteed crits from Armor Breaker. For Anoint, always go Deep Trance for the reduced cost of skill. This both affects your mana and your life cost, gives you a little bit of attack speed on top. Go for a Stone Charm so you don't really get stunned. You can also go for an Anti-Freeze Charm, or you can go for +2 charms right here and go Anti-Freeze, Anti-Slow, whatever you want. On Life Flask, you want amount recovered, and then either reduced flask charges used or gain charges. Both are good. Same is true for the Flask. As for base types, you want to use ultimates on both. And then if you have a ton of money, with like 20 plus divines, definitely go for Melting Maelstrom. This flask is ridiculous. As for the passive tree, there is really only one keystone that we want to get to, which is Giant Blood, which lets us dual wield maces. Since this is not a leveling build or anything like that, I'm not going to talk about priorities or anything like that. Let's say you're level 80 or something and you want to cut anything. It's probably like early jewel sockets or maybe this AoE right here, this AoE cluster, but most of the stuff is pretty required. You can potentially leave out like one energy shield cluster if you feel confident about it. But most of what I'm going to talk about here is the weapon swap. So you can see the outline right here, right? Like the white yellowish outline where I path through stuff. I get a lot of strength, right? I get int along the way. This completely depends on what you need. I go down here. And what you need to understand is these are the points that affect everything. However, when I'm weapon swapping, there are two sets of passives. You can see right here, weapon set 1 and weapon set 2. Once again, I have a video down below teaching you how to set weapon set passives. I use all of them. Here's how it works. On my two-handers, which is my damage dealers, I have all the totem damage nodes. So they get snapshot onto this weapon. Whenever I use this weapon, all those nodes are used. So for example, totem damage right here, go Carved Earth. Maximum totems, super important, from Ancestral Artifice and also Watchtowers. You want all of these. If you can, even more placement speed, right? I'm just not high enough level. All the totem damage. As well as that, I'm even taking these last two nodes in terms of Skull Crusher because they're also just needed whenever I have my totems up. So that is important to note. All these red nodes that you're going to see in the planner are on weapon set 1 and they're all damage related. However, when I swap to weapon set 2, you're going to see these green nodes line up. And what is that? Well, now I'm in shield mode. So what do I do in shield mode? I block. Now, if you're like, oh, wait, so I place down my totems and then I lose all my damage. That is not true. I know that if you look here, you will see that it got downgraded to level 30, but that is not true. That is not how the damage works. You would notice because you would deal like 5% of your damage. It's snapshots, 100%. So just so you know, the sheet DPS is completely irrelevant when you weapon swap. So what you want to pick up is all the block nodes you can get, as well as, so you can see this block, these block nodes, right? Everything that's green, I'm picking them all up. And don't forget that you actually get more block chance because we are Titan with hulking form. And then you have 4 points left, which are a little bit of a question mark. You can either go breakage right here for even more armor break. However, that might actually be overkill. Maybe you should just go into investing energies. You can also go for maybe thickened arteries, because you're gonna stand still mostly whenever you're gonna armor break, which is mostly what you do on weapon set 2, right? Once again, you're gonna armor break, you're gonna but I don't really know. This is kind of up to you. I currently have breakage. Other than that, on jewels, what you really want to go for is any sort of increased damage. So totem damage, global physical damage, attack damage, melee damage, all those work. After that, totem placement speed, life regeneration rate, and really valuable as well, which is something a lot of people miss out on, is weapon swap speed. Since we are working quite a bit with weapon swap, if you can get 1 or 2 of those in, I know it's on the passive tree, but it's just out of the way. As for leveling, once again, this is not a good first build, so the only way to level warrior, in my opinion, comfortably is actually with leveling gear. I go over this in my leveling setup for any class. This means any class, even warrior, and it is just an absolute blessing. You're gonna level with Ice Strike, you're gonna explode hordes of monsters, and you're gonna jump around with Pillar of the Cage God. You're gonna get flat damage, attributes, everything explained in here. Or if you prefer, there's also a max roll planner down below in the description. Now, question you might have is, when can you actually transition from that leveling version to this version? Sunder becomes good, I would say, around about level 60, level 70-ish. Until then, if you want to, you can use something like Shockwave Totem. You can even use Shockwave Totem for longer if you wish to. All you need is to start out with is 2+6 to melee skills. You obviously want to swap into a +7 really soon, but that has a certain level requirement attached to it. I think it's like 64 higher. I think there's a few lower ones, but they're very expensive. So yeah, round about level 70-ish, you want your +7, maybe 75, depends. But 2 of these weapons plus a Shockwave Totem will go a long way. And during leveling, it's actually not a big deal if you have, for example, one of these weapons plus a Hrimnors. It's also kind of nice for clear speed. Now, we currently have some nerfs or buffs coming up. So I have a few scenarios here, and I will obviously update the video, but just so you know, in terms of energy shield and stuff, there's nothing really that's going to get nerfed on this build. It is not, nothing here is like broken or anything like that, or on the chopping block like a lot of the other classes are. We're on warrior after all. It has to have one upside, but energy shield might get nerfed. So what happens if, for example, the most likely scenario for me is energy shield gets nerfed, armor gets buffed. In that case, I will make an update with Black Braid. Black Braid makes it so armor applies to elemental damage, and while yes, it doesn't have a lot of armor on its own, that will make armor a lot more potent. Let's, for example, say they make armor more potent, which is one of the only ways they could buff it. This means a lot against all the elemental damage you're randomly taking in a map. And it will basically mean that we're going to pick up all these small armor nodes. Remember, we are Hulking form. Every small node here is 22% increased armor, which is ridiculous. And some of these are also quite strong. So you also get a lot of flat armor. For example, over here, we have a lot of strength requirement, right? And everything. We're going to take all of them, and we're basically going to replace all of this right here. So we have so many points to play with. And the second scenario would be a lot worse, which would be energy shield is nerfed, but armor still sucks, which I think is quite unlikely, especially since Crypt made 2 videos about it. But let's say that happens. Either we take the hit, and let's, for example, say the nodes get nerfed and we're only going to be at like 3 KES. If Grim Feast remains, that's still fine. If it doesn't remain, that sounds pretty bad. At that point, we're going to do the same. We're going to cut all of these points, and we're most likely going to go full life. We're going to go blood magic like a lot of the Shockwave Totem builds are doing. And then we're going to scale absolutely all the region we can find. Armor sucks, but we're probably still going to go for like the most premium ones, because now we're going to have a little bit of armor. We can cut this helmet, we can cut this chest, which will make resistances a lot easier. We're probably going to fill all of these runes with percentage maximum life, and at the end we're probably going to have 4 to 5k life. And since we don't really need any of the auras anymore, there's a good chance we're also going to experiment with Chaos Heart. With corruption, this can go up to like 1,200 or even more life. But yeah, that's about all I got. Once again, if you want the written version, check out the macro guide, which will be linked down below in the description. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video. I really hope that in the future there will be a better alternative than going energy shield on a Titan. Once again, I have this kind of future proof, but it still kind of feels wrong. I really hope I can soon go into some armor shenanigans, but yeah, we'll have to see what GG does next. And with that said, I'll probably do a follow-up FAQ video on this, or if anything new comes up, I will also update you. So if you want to sub in the meantime, do so. Also leave a like if you enjoyed the video. You guys know the drill already. But yeah, since I still don't have a slogan, see you next time.